Yeah, what's going on, people? You already know how I do. We start the show, then we gotta share it, make sure it's everywhere. And as we sharing it, give everybody enough time to come in, log in, check it out. You already know. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And I know with the green screen, it's kind of, you know, fuzzing my head out a little bit, but it'll be all right. It ain't a little disappearing head ain't never hurt nobody. You know, these women, head be disappearing all the time. It's, it's all good. So, just posting it up, making sure it's getting out there, and then we're gonna get into it for the night. Log in. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? All right. So class has been shared. What it do, people? What it do? All right. So tonight's class. Last week we talked about preparing for your second time on stage. Again, the class is brought from a perspective of if you've never been on stage before, and this is your first times on stage, your first experiences with being in the comedy arena. So everything's from that perspective. But if you got questions, you've been doing it a little bit longer than somebody who just started out. You might have been doing it for a year, 2 years, or something like that. You got questions. That's what I'm here for that too. So don't think because you're like, well, I did that, I can't get no help. No, we're here for that too. So whatever, whatever stage you at in your career, um, but you just need some help because you don't have anybody to help you out per se. You don't have a veteran headliner in your city who could teach you and show you how the game goes and how to do it. That's what this class is for. So now, that being said, tonight, last time we did second time on stage. This time you got on stage. You getting on stage your second time. What up, Black and Educated? We That's where we coming from this time. And always, I just want to make sure I put this out here too. If you've been doing stand up for a little while, and one of the things, if you watch the other classes, you see one of the things I tell you to do is record yourself. If you ever recorded yourself, upload it to YouTube, and then on Monday nights, come fall through, and if you send it to me, DM me, and send me your stand up, your set, 5 minutes or less, and we'll watch it. You get some feedback from myself, and it's not always just comics watching. There's other people who watch just for the simple fact that they're interested in how comedy goes, how it works, what's the behind the scenes of stand-up comedy. So you can get some feedback. Sometimes you got bad habits or you're not doing something and you don't realize you're not doing it. And sometimes it take another set of eyes to be on that content and let you know, dang, I didn't see that I was doing that, or I didn't know I said that, or wow, yeah, that is going to help this joke out. So that type of feedback. So now it's your second time on stage. You can ready to go on stage. You've gone on your second time. You should have made your adjustments from having watched your first set. Remember, always record your set. Always. Not just audio, video. If you can't get video, then audio works. But video, you get to see those physical nuances because comedy is physical. It's your facial expressions, your body language, stuff like that. One of the things, and I want to talk about this too. I I learned that there are a lot of people who don't realize that your stand up comedy is body language too. Part of your set is you have to be able to sell whatever you're doing. So if you don't have confidence in what you're selling or what you're pushing, you can't expect whoever you're performing in front of to be accepting and buying to whatever you're selling or pushing. So you gotta always keep that in mind. So if you lack confidence on stage, nobody's saying you have to be super overconfident. Oh, I'm finna kill it. I'm finna murk it. But you can't be scared. And if you're scared, you can't come across as scared. Black Educated, what about sketch comedy skits? Does it have to be stand-up? No. Yeah, but if you do sketch, just being a sketch comedy person does not make you a stand-up comedian. So those are two different arenas, two different mindsets, two different comedy muscles that you're working when you do sketches as opposed to stand-up comedy. Sketches, you relying on other people. You got other people in there. You can do it 3 or 4 times over and over again till you get it right. You go on stage, ain't no do it 3, 4 times over. However it come out of your mouth when you on stage, that's how it is. Ain't no looking for the best way to do it in that moment as a stand-up comic. Now, of course, you can make your adjustments and come back and do it next week, but that's next week. But tonight is however it came out. It's however you did it tonight. So that's the difference of sketch comedy and stand-up comedy. And I know everybody doesn't differentiate between the two. It's a lot of people who aren't stand-up comics, but because they're comedic actors, people assume that they're comedians, and they're not. I'll give you a prime example of that. The guy who played on Jerry Seinfeld. Oh, excuse me. The guy who played George Costanza. George Costanza is a classically trained actor, but because he's so funny on Jerry Seinfeld, people assumed that he was a comedian, and he's not. People on Fred Sanford, people like Grady and Bubba, because they were funny on Fred Sanford, people assumed that they were comedians, and they weren't. They just actually were Red Fox's friends who he put on the show because they were his friends. He was like, yo, if I'm going to give a paycheck to somebody, I'm going to give it to my friends. And so that's how people like Grady, Bubba, Esther, and all those people got to be people that were Fred's friends. That's how they got to be on there because of Fred, and that's what he did. So again, so Black Educators, to answer your question, sketch comedy and skits, no, it doesn't have to be stand-up comedy. But here, this is what we're focusing on because that's what I'm trying to help stand-up comics. That whole nother conversation, whole nother arena, whole nother ball game. Again, although some people blur those lines and don't think they're different, they are different. Now, so getting back to it. So you get on stage, you should have made your adjustments from your first time on stage. You've gone on stage, you're on stage your second time. One of the things I want you to do when you hit your second time on stage, I want you to be very cognizant of the change, the reception of the changes that you have made from your first time on stage to your second time on stage. I want you to be very aware of how you say the joke. If the adjustments you made, I want you to be very intentional in those changes. If you did the first joke and you were talking about dogs and how they bark, and you said, man, dogs be barking like crazy, and you determined that ain't how you want to say it, that you want to say, man, dogs be barking hella loud. Make sure you're intentional by saying hella loud. Don't say dogs be barking like crazy. They be barking hella loud. Now you've put a punchline that you know don't work with a punchline that you hope work. Now you might have killed the new punchline because you put it with a punchline that you've proven from your first week don't work or didn't get a good response the first week. So why would you say that again? And I mentioned that because a lot of times new comics, they have in their head what they want to say. And the first time they went on stage, they might have practiced that so many times. So they know that joke and they know what they want to say the first time. And so that's ingrained in your memory. But then when you went on stage the first time, you learned that, oh, that was ingrained in my memory, but I shouldn't have probably said that. When you go back on stage, even though you know you shouldn't say it, it's a comfort zone because it's easy to remember because you've taken the time to learn that. But you didn't necessarily take the time to learn this new one because it's a small adjustment. And sometimes you lean on what you're comfortable with, even though what you're comfortable with doesn't necessarily work. I know comics who've been in comedy for a while, and they still go up and do the same trash 5 minutes, and they won't change. And it's like they scared to change as if that 5 minutes is somehow tearing the club apart. But what it is that 5 minutes has some funny in it. It gets some chuckles. And so they are scared that if they make a change, that they may lose those little chuckles and little laughs that they may get in that 5 minutes. But comedy Comedy is like doing a high wire act with no net. Part of the fun and part of the beauty, part of the artistry, and part of what makes us special is the fact that we go out there on that tightrope with no net and just throw it up. We don't know if the wind gonna blow, somebody gonna push you off. We don't know none of that. But we still go out there and we do it. And again, the part of the beauty is saying something and doing something that you have put some thought into, not just doing stuff to be doing stuff. Because there are people who do that too. Just go on stage and say anything just to get a response, just to get, I mean, that only lasts for so long. You're gonna only be able to shock people into, excuse me, you're only gonna be able to shock people into listening to you for so long. That's only gonna work for so long. Eventually, you're gonna have some substance to go along with that. So just keep that in mind. So now be very intentional with what you're trying to do. Be very intentional with what you're saying. Now, you make those adjustments and you make those changes. I always say the time where you'll start to see what truly works and what truly doesn't work is roughly your fourth or fifth time on stage. Sometimes stuff click earlier than that. And the reason why I say fourth or fifth time, because you're going on the first time, that just threw it out there. The second time you made an adjustment. The third time you go on stage is because now you're working off of two sets and a comparison. You have a comparison of two sets. You did the first one, you did the second one. You can look at both, look at the changes, and you can kind of see, oh, maybe now you're starting to see, maybe I need to go in this direction. That's if you're paying attention. If you're paying attention, then it starts to give you a better direction on where to go. Now, your fourth time, you start to learn what direction you possibly could go in, and you're trying out the direction as well as the changes from the first two sets. That's why I say the fourth to fifth time, you should start to not necessarily get better, because it takes time to get better. It takes trial and error if you were terrible the first time. But the third or fourth time, if you're paying attention, if you're focused, if you are truly listening to yourself and you're listening to the crowd, you're paying attention to what the crowd is telling you, then you should be making the type of adjustments that at least you're seeing some growth in that set. That's what you should be experiencing. You should be starting to see. Black educated 5150. What about the 5150? I don't get what you're saying, what you're asking me. So I want to be able to respond to you. So now you've gone on stage, and let's assume that the adjustments you made didn't work either. You went on stage the first time, you recorded it, you listened to it, and you saw an area that you want to make a change to. You made that change, went on stage the second time, and you still didn't get the response you were looking for. Now, this is what you need to do. You need to evaluate whether or not whatever you're talking about is interesting or not, whether or not what you're talking about is offensive to whoever you're performing in front of or not. And it may be your delivery of what you're saying. See, so those are the types of things that recording yourself allows you to pay attention to, and allows you to see, and allows you to open up. But you have to be, again, that's why I say, when you record and you watch yourself, you have to be very intentional. Because if you're not intentional, you're going to miss the slight nuances. And this is, again, based upon you being in an area where you don't have a whole bunch of other veteran comics to say, hey, you should do this, or did you think about this, or when you did so and so, you didn't do X. If you don't have that, then you have to be open to being your own worst critic. You have to be open to that, because if there's nobody else with any knowledge to push you, you have to push yourself. And one of the ways you can push yourself is set your standard higher. Set your standard higher. Decide what your standard is and go 2-3 notches above that. Again, decide what you think your standard is and hold yourself to about 2-3 notches above that. So if in your head you say, man, I just want to be funny for 3 minutes right now, then you need to be pushing yourself to be funny for 5 minutes. That's if you funny at all. And you should compare the sound of the laughter that you're getting to proven comics. Not your friends, not other new comics, but proven hard-hitting headliners that come to your city and you get an opportunity to see. Compare the laughter you get in your open mic to their laughter. Because that's the standard. If they're getting nice, strong, hearty laughter and you're not, then that should be your standard. You should be trying to reach for that level of laughter. That's what you should be looking. How long did it take you to cultivate your best joke? I don't necessarily know if I have a best joke. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from a guy named Ken Spearman. Ken Spearman used to be the manager of Uptown Comedy Corner. And Ken Spearman's advice was, because one of the things comedians do, they have a closing joke. So a lot of times comics who've been doing it for a while, because you're taught to leave stage on this crescendo. So you have a closing joke that gives you that crescendo. And sometimes, your time gets up for whatever reason before you can get to that crescendo. And then comics will go over their time because they're trying to set up that closing joke that they really have ran out of time to set up. And they add one other joke. And then, you say something to them, but why ain't you closed in? Like, man, that wasn't my closer. The advice Ken gave me was that every joke should be able to be your closing joke. Again, that's how you raise your standard. You should be able to close on any joke you do. So if you're in the middle of a joke, you shouldn't be thinking, oh, dang, I ain't even got to my close yet. You should be able to close on that joke. Get to the end, hit the punchline, say, thank y'all, that's my time. That's what you should be able to do. So I don't necessarily have a best joke. And at the stage that I'm at now, it's a little bit different. I create content a little bit different. Remember, we talked about different people's processes, and I talked about the fact that my process is I'm a rambler. So ramblers talk, and they'll talk themselves into the joke. They talk themselves into the punchline, and we'll talk ourselves into the highs and the lows of the joke. And the way we're able to do that is because we don't care about the lows. We can live with the crowd not giving us a response at the low point of the joke because we know we're working towards something. A lot of times people who aren't ramblers, they're not really comfortable with the silence as you talk and you're saying things that may not necessarily be funny or be getting a response at that particular time. Well, us ramblers, we don't really care about the silence. We trying to get out what we're trying to get out, and we listening for when that silence turns into laughter. We're okay with that because then that gives us this definitive moment of when that has changed. So the time that it takes to cultivate a joke per person, it's going to change. For me, it varies. I've come up with jokes that are in my set now to where I just was on stage rambling, hosting, and I said it. And I was like, yo, that's a keeper right there. And it was already funny. It came out perfectly, and I added it to my set. So it took minutes to create that great joke. And I've had jokes that are in my set that started off as 1 or 2 lines and have grown into full bits. So it just varies. Yes, I do have a set, but see, what I'm talking about rambling, that's doing open mic or doing a guest spot. That's what I'm talking about rambling. So no, when I do a set, no, I'm straight in my set. You don't always have the room to create when you're doing a true set, a paid set, because when you pay, nobody paying you up there to experiment. They paying you to come with it. So when I'm getting paid on the show, yeah, I do my set, and I don't necessarily play around. I don't take a whole bunch of risk when I'm getting paid, because again, nobody pays you to come and be on some bull. They pay you to come there to produce. It's like being a football player. You the quarterback, and you've been in practice. You've been playing around with a new way to throw the ball, but you in the playoffs. No, we're not using that new way you to throw the ball in the playoffs. What we want you to do is throw the ball the same way you've been throwing it to get us to the playoffs. Don't come in here trying new stuff. And that's the same thing. And that's kind of how that works. So you rambling. He said, no rambling in the set. No rambling in the set. Your set is your set. Is your script, is you sticking to the script, and you hitting the lines, you hitting the emotions, you hitting the laughter, you hitting all those things that you have planned and you have built into your set. All of those things happen. And no, rambling happens at a different moment, because that's what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the creative process, and we're talking about the growth process. That's what the classes are about. The classes aren't necessarily about your set. Now, people who've been doing it for a while will help it. I am helping with their sets, yes, but that's not necessarily the focus of this. So remember, when I say this, my perspective is always going to be from that of a newer comedian. That's it. Open mic is a ramble. No. So and a set is a set. Okay. So, okay, Black Educated. I want you to go back and watch the other episodes. I'm gonna cover this again though. So different comedians have different creative processes, how they create material, how they come up with new jokes. Some comedians write everything out, then they get on stage on open mic or a guest set, and they do that material that they've written out and learned by heart. You have some comedians who have a concept and a punchline, but they don't really have the middle. So they'll go on stage, they'll throw out the concept, talk in the middle, and then hit them with the punchline. So different people create different ways. And that's why I gave the example. It's like Chris Rock is a so Dave Chappelle is a rambler. So Dave Chappelle will go on stage in LA or whatever and be on stage for 2 hours and just talk. But he's recording the whole thing. That's rambling. He's just rambling. He's just talking, just getting stuff out that he wants to talk about and whatever, being funny, and that he's rambling. And then once he records it, he'll boil that down and he'll pick out all of the highs of it. And that's the beginning of a new joke or new sets and yada, yada, yada. Chris Rock, on the other hand, Chris Rock will write everything out, learn it, and then he'll go do a set at the club. And once he does that set, he'll record it. He'll come break that set down like game footage like an NFL coach or a football coach. And him and his writer, Mario Joyner, they will break down each line of that set, and he will see what he likes, what he doesn't like, what he needs to change, what he wants to change. And then the next time he goes on stage, he will have made those changes. Chris's method is probably the most efficient and the safest because it cuts down on the unknown. Because if you write everything out and you learn it, and then you come on stage and you do it, you know exactly what you're going to say and exactly what you're going to do. Ramblers, we don't necessarily know where we're going with it. We just know we want to talk about something, whatever that something is. We just know we want to talk about that. And you go on stage and you talk about that. And since you're already funny, you know, you tend, if you're a rambler and you're just naturally funny, you tend to talk yourself into the punchline. That's typically how ramblers do. But it's a lot of trial and error, and you got to be willing to deal with long periods of silence as you just talking. Because remember, you talk, you don't know where you want to go. So you're just talking, trying to figure out what direction you want to go in. So you got to be prepared to deal with a lot of silence. And then you got to be strong enough to know that if the crowd becomes agitated with that silence, how do I bring them back? See, so it's a more dangerous way. That's why as I teach this more in line with the Chris Rock approach, more so than the Rambler approach, because the Rambler approach is significantly harder. Just FYI. So you ramble into a joke and then cut out the extra stuff and use that for your set. Yes. But again, it's a significantly harder process because the thing about rambling, you can ramble into a joke and it still just be funny that night. So so you still have to come back and see if what you rambled into is sustainable. Does it still travel well? Does it still hit in front of another audience? Maybe you just rambled into a joke that was funny in front of the crowd you was in. See, so even if you ramble into the punchline and you ramble into it, you still have to go through the process and figure out, is this something that's universally funny? Is this funny in other places? Is this funny in front of other crowds and other things? All that stuff still has to take place. Just the creative process to come up with it is different. Again, Chris doesn't go on stage and come up with a joke. He already got the joke when he hit stage. Again, significantly easier route to go. Victor, I got to pick out the highs. Is there such a thing as a style like rappers? Yeah, because in comedy you have storytellers. Dave Chappelle. I mean, not Dave Chappelle. What's his name? Bill Bellamy. Bill Bellamy's a storyteller. Bill Cosby, storyteller. Who else? I'm trying to think who else is a storyteller. Bernie Mac, storyteller. Yeah, so those are storytellers. Then you have one-liners, comics. Rodney Dangerfield was a one-liner comic. You know, one-liner is set up, punchline, set up, punchline, set up, punchline. It's a lot of material, but it moves very, very fast. One-liner. You know, I walked down the street and I saw my wife. Who's this bitch? One-liner. Andrew Dice Clay was a one-liner dude. Like I say, Rodney Dangerfield. I don't know if you know who Henry Welch is. Henry Welch is a one-line. He does a bunch of one-liners. So you definitely have styles. I'm trying to think. You have prop comics. That's a style. Ventriloquist. That's a style. Prop comics, physical comics. That's a style. And then you definitely have styles, but then a lot of times as a stand-up comic, your comedy is less based upon your style and more based upon your personality. Some comics have a slow pace, some have a fast pace. Some comics are very energetic and loud on stage. Some comics are very laid back, have a very laid back style. So again, most of the time with stand-up comedians, your style is more based upon your personality and your delivery, more so than those types of things. Those are more people. Some people refer to them as styles, and some people refer to them as category. What type of comic is he, or what type of comic is she? Or she's a prop comic, or she's a. But sometimes people say, what type of comic is she's a storyteller? You know what I'm saying? So it just varies. Depends on who you are, and the type of comic you are is going to be heavily based upon who you are. Typically, very laid back people aren't super loud and obnoxious, and very obnoxious people aren't typically very laid back on stage. Again, your persona on stage tends to mimic your real life personality, because that usually shines through, and that usually is where you're most comfortable at, and you're most comfortable being is yourself. And that's the big goal, is to get to yourself. All right. Any more questions? I know I'll be on for an hour. I'll be trying to keep it closer to the 30-minute mark, but when y'all have questions and then we have sets to look over, I'm here for it. So I'm all with that. Any more questions before we get up out of here? Don't forget, if you got sets, send them to me. Let's look at them. Let's check them out. I think I'm going to have a guest next week. I'm not going to tell you who it is, because I want to make sure he's going to be able to make it. And we're going to go from there, because he said, hey, man, I want to help out with the class. I want to be a part of it. So I'm going to bring him in, and I'll let you know ahead of time if he's able to make it, because you may want this dude to shine for this particular dude. Of course, he He has a name. He's one of them comics that definitely has a name, has a following. So we'll see. Any more questions before we adjourn for the evening? Victoria, did you make those adjustments we talked about in your set? Did you try those out? I remember we looked at your set. Did you make those adjustments, changes? And if you did, how did they work out? How did it go? Let me know. Just asking that, Victoria. People like, who? Why are you talking to Victoria? Victoria sent her set. We checked them out. Yes, yes, you did. How did they work out? How did they go? How did those adjustments go? Do you see any growth? Did they help you out? Any upward mobility in those adjustments that talk about their sister? Yeah, let me know. Get up out of here. Don't forget, all y'all know other comics. I know that. And as y'all doing these spots, they see these comics, and some of them can be horrible. You should tell them, say, hey, yo, man, I got a class that'll help you out. Come check out my man Lab Love on Mondays. He gonna help you work out that bull that you just did on stage. Let them know. They work great. I had a show last week, 5 minutes, got great feedback from the audience. Hey, then we winning. If we winning, if adjustments work great and you got great feedback from the 5 minutes from the audience, then mission complete. And that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to help you get better. At the end of the day, that's it. Just want you to get better, get funny, help you grow. It felt easier as well for me to focus on two topics. I got you. I got you. I just want you to win. At the end of the day, that's it. I don't really know what this whole idea, this idea that we got to compete or I got to be funnier than another comic. It ain't about being funnier because you're never going to be funnier than another comic. Never. You're never going to be funnier than another comic because you can go and you can rip, and it can be 100 people in there and you smash, but it's still going to be 10 people in there, but like, you was funny, but I like this dude over here. I really liked him, or I really liked her. There's always going to be some people that thought you were funny, but like somebody else better. So yeah, so you can't. So I don't know who started the idea that this was a competition. It's really not a competition. It's really not. It's just everybody just want to be funny. You want to bring your funny, your brand of funny, and get your laughs because your laughs are for you and their laughs are for them, and everybody can go home. Because the best shows are the show when everybody murk. That's a good show. When you leave, you're like, yo, man, everybody had a good set last night. That's when you know it was a good show. So, hey, everybody enjoy the rest of your Monday. Have a great rest of your week. Holler at me if you need me. I'm here for it. I'll see y'all next Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tell somebody that knows somebody who needs some help with their set. I'm here for you.